How are we doing today, guys? So what we're going to talk about today is the toe to bar. We're going to go through toe to bar and toe to ring and some of the variations to build yourself up to it. Now, big thing that we're going to be thinking about when we're talking about a toe to bar is the same as what we've been talking about with the pull-ups and the muscle-ups, which is building up understanding around how to move your ribs and your toes either side of the bar, the balance. So when you're doing it either on the toe to ring or the toe to bar, the big thing that you want to be thinking about is keeping rib cage on one side, feet on the other, which means that whether or not you're in your arch position or in your hollow position, if I'm holding onto that bar, I need to be thinking about creating balance between the upper body and the lower body. Your center of mass, it's about hip height or belly button height, somewhere between belly buttons and the center of the hips, in the center of the body. If you can keep that center of mass perfectly balanced underneath or in line with this bar from wherever you're hanging, you'll find it significantly easier to control your movement. When this goes for all the base gymnastics movements. So really focus on using the shoulders to control that action, or the rib cage to control that action, and not just swing the legs around. Particularly with toe to bars, you'll see it quite often, because it's the first gymnastics movement a lot of people try and get. They'll swing the legs around a lot, and it means it just creates a swinging action and not a kipping action. So for reference, a swinging action is when you're holding onto that bar and you're swinging regardless, whereas a kip is an active action between that forwards and backwards. So it's where the ribs and legs move in opposition to each other, which should be a base first movement. So I'm going to do a kip swing, which is basically just watching the knees and the legs moving in opposition to each other. When you start this, jump straight up onto the bar, dead hang, so from underneath, not from behind. That way you don't have a swing there to begin with. If I jump up here, it's going to allow me to be completely dead. From there, I can focus on my rib movement to create my kip swing. Now, big thing with kip swing is I can stop dead at any time. And that's the big difference between a kip versus a swing. We don't want to swing, we want to kip. Okay? So, big cues that you want to be thinking about when you're starting to think about your toe to bars. One, having that slight false grip over the top. You don't need it for a toe to bar, however, it's a good habit to build up to and all the rest of it. So by false grip, I mean knuckles getting on top of that bar at the top of the rep. Like so. Now, if we're talking about grips, you can have thumb around as well as thumb over the top. With toe to bars, honestly, both work, both are fine. But in general, thumb around is a better idea long term. Provides a little bit more grip around the bar, but it also allows you to progress to your muscle up significantly easier and safer. You're less likely to come off the bar. Once you've got all the movements down pat and you're fine with everything, then yeah, you can switch over to thumb over the top if you want to. It can help sometimes with just rotating the pressures on your hands, particularly if your hands are getting quite sore. So that can be quite useful from that standpoint. But in general, thumb around. In terms of grip width, a bit wider than shoulders, that way we're mimicking all our other gymnastics as well. Now, in terms of cues that we want to be thinking about when we're talking about a toe to bar. Obviously the hollow and arch. So with hollow, you're thinking about hips are tucking under, ribs are pulling down, arms are pulling down on top of that bar, legs are locked, toes are pointed. When you're thinking about your arch, you're thinking about pulling back on the bar, from there creating extension through the upper back, from there creating extension through the hip, not through the lower back. Ideally, you want the hip creating that extension, not the lumbar spine. Cues to go into from here. So, once you start getting your kip swing and building that kip swing, we want to start to gradually build the height of the legs up. Now, I'm going to talk about this as a leg straight action, mainly because that's more pure gymnastics, but it also gives you more leverage. So remember, if you're trying to create a movement, particularly around the bar, which will gradually build into muscle ups, you want to have more leverage out in front of you. More leverage you have out in front of you, the further you can travel behind the bar. So this is a good habit to learn for long-term gymnastics progressions, rather than just trying to get a toe to bar. Because obviously just getting a toe to bar, quite often people can just roll themselves up and flick their toes at it. But quite often they'll struggle to string them together because they haven't got that rib and leg movement. Putting the legs out in front further will literally force the rib cage further back. It makes the concepts easier to understand and easier to feel and create sensation around. Better we can create sensation, better people are going to learn quicker. So think about using a straight leg position rather than going knees to chest all the time. However, that's a good scaling option if you need to for like workouts and things like that. It's a common one that's used, but in terms of learning the skill, keep those legs straight and build from there. So target here, and obviously actually while we're on that topic, really easy concept to gradually build this up is have a toe target. So to actually hit, so you can easily set up something like a hurdle or something like that, or have another person hold a stick out for you. That way you can just tap those toes on that lower target to allow you to just gradually build that height up. So I'm just going to gradually work that. So I'm going to go through the same thing, the kip swing. I'm just hollow and arching, and then from there, as my rib cage comes back, I'm going to use that leverage of the rib cage coming back to lift the toes. And then I'm gradually going to just go slightly higher, slightly higher, slightly higher, and I'm going to stop before I actually hit the bar, and we'll explain the next concept. So as you saw, I just gradually got a little bit higher, a little bit higher, a little bit higher. I was a little bit messy on those first couple of swings, and you would have seen me control that as I had to move higher and higher. As you get higher, you will have to be more controlled with your movements. So when we go into that action, typically where people get caught is they try and go too high too soon. So you notice how I wasn't trying to rush that. I was just letting my ribs travel backwards and moving as high as what the rib traveling backwards would allow me to. Arch again, repeat the process. When people try and force the legs to go higher than what the rib cage is allowing, typically they'll start rotating underneath the bar, which will help you get more height on your legs. Problem with that though is that it keeps the ribs down underneath this anchor point, underneath the bar itself, rather than behind the bar. And that means that you don't actually have as much leverage to pull down on, which means you can't keep your ribs there, which means your ribs are going to start swinging this way, which will mean that there's a lot of your body weight that's now on this side of the bar rather than underneath. And that'll mean that's where people start swinging. And that's where you'll start feeling good rep, bad rep, good rep, bad rep, good rep, bad rep, where you'll get, it's really easy to tap the toes on. That's where you've swung back this way, easy to get the toes on. Whereas the next rep, you've swung back the other way, almost impossible to get your toes up. So if you're feeling like you get one good rep, one bad rep, one good rep, one bad rep, it means that you're swinging. And how we fix the swing is not by trying to rotate upwards, it's by trying to generate more force backwards to get the ribs a little bit higher, but also getting your legs up faster and most importantly, down faster. So as you come up, you want to be thinking about initiating and driving yourself into the arch by actually forcing your feet downwards. Now, notice I'm not saying backwards, I'm saying down. Because if you create the pressure downwards, you're more likely to stay long and hip extend, whereas if you go backwards, you're more likely to arch back with your legs and use your back to do the action rather than doing it with the toes. Now, what this allows you to do is to get that height a little bit higher each time on the bar, and that's what allows you to create a really nice, smooth kip swing, because it's generating force in the opposite direction. So, I'm going to chalkily chalk hands, and again, chalk is really useful for just keeping the hands dry when it's hot in particular, which can allow you to maintain your grip, you're less likely to tear. So as I do this, I'm going to be thinking about actively pushing my feet down whenever I change direction and come back. And what you should see is the ribcage comes through quicker, which will allow me to create better momentum up into the next rep. So by me pulling down like that, it allowed me to create a bigger swing back action with my ribcage, which allowed me to just tap the toes gently on the bar and bring back down again. And again, the entire time, what you should have noticed, my legs and ribs were on opposite sides of the bar, and I was able to maintain that balance, around the bar. Those are the actions that we want to be thinking about. So, to put it all together, false grip, balance around the bar, hollow, pull down on top of the bar, to allow yourself to move your ribs back, snap those toes up as you do that. From there, snap the legs back down with your hamstrings and glutes, keeping the legs long to allow yourself to arch, to get the ribs through, and repeat. And just gradually build that height higher and higher and higher until you can hit it. When you're learning it, focus on the rhythm and learning to string reps together. Don't focus on getting one. If all you ever do is get one, you're going to really struggle to learn those concepts. Whereas if you practice the skill, even if you're not quite touching, just get as high as you can. Trust me, long term, it'll get you there faster. Now, quickly what we're going to do is talk about toes to rings. Toes to rings are a great way of learning all those other concepts in a slightly easier way. Because we've got the pendulum where the anchor point's much higher, it means that the rib cage moves through a lot easier, but it also means that the rib cage moves back easier. And because the rib cage moves back easier, it actually makes it really, really easy to have some hang time there to work on getting your toes to the rings and then understand that pull down action to get yourself back into the arch. So it slows everything down for you, which gives you good sensation to build the understanding for the toe to bar itself. So toes to rings are a great kind of medium to kind of throw in between your sets of not quite getting toe to bars. It's a great way to kind of learn that concept and learn that action. Everything stays the same. False grip, ribs go forwards, arch into your arch, hollow, pull down, snap the legs up, get your touch, come back down again, and deliberately snap down, drive yourself to the arch, repeat the process. So same thing as I go through. So same action, just slightly longer travel time, which allows you to slow everything down and get your contact points. Hope you guys enjoyed that. If you have any questions, flick us a message. If not, thanks for watching.